One of the questions was, where do I park the moving truck? I'm here. It's move-in day. Where do I park the moving truck? That is something you would have discussed beforehand, typically with probably the sales director as you're getting all those logistics planned. So not being in the community, I am not part of their actual team. I don't work at the community. Welcome to Aging in Style with Lori Williams, the podcast all about finding the silver lining no matter what life throws your way. I'm Lori Williams, an award-winning senior living expert, author, educator, and caregiver to my husband, Mark. Join me as I share insights, tips, and personal stories to help you navigate the world of senior housing, discover ways to pay for care, advocate for your loved ones, and most importantly, learn how to thrive, not just survive, as you age. Hi, welcome to Aging in Style. Today, I want to talk about something that I don't think we've ever been super clear about on the podcast. So it kind of came up this week with a real sweet family I was working with, and it's come up a few times in the past. So I thought, let's make this very clear. And what I want to talk about is where the role of what I do as a senior placement agency, where that ends, and the role of the community, if you're moving to a senior housing community, where their role begins. And I think this is really important to address to avoid any confusion. As a senior placement service, we are helping you figure out where the best senior community is for your parent or loved one. And that could be, senior apartment, independent living, assisted, memory care, or residential care home. On the other side of that, we have built relationships with all of these different communities, and we know their pricing, we know what they offer, we know anything special and unique about them, so that when we are talking to you about your loved one, we can match you to the community that we think will fit. And so normally we will provide you with 2 to 3 communities that we think are a good fit. And we're usually pretty darn good at this because we do this all the time and we're in and out of all of these communities. So the question that comes into play, and this is what happened with the family I was working with last week, they were calling me about things that are really for the community. And I try to communicate that pretty well. But sometimes I see where, it gets a little blurred at times on who does what. So that's what I want to talk about today. So our role as a senior placement service, what my team and I do, we are the ones, we listen to your story. You can cry on our shoulders. We've heard so much, and we are here to help you and comfort you and guide you along the way. We're going to find out what your needs are, the needs of your loved ones, any preferences, like if your mother just adores gardening or dad likes to go to WinStar, to the casinos. We're going to listen to all that, and we start forming in our mind where we think they will be a good fit. And we then educate you about the different options and, what is an independent living versus an assisted living or a memory care, why we think your loved one is going to be a good fit in, these certain communities, the select communities that we're going to refer you to. And then we go ahead and refer that information out. We tell you the communities, we connect you with them, and then we can help you with scheduling a time to visit, and we stay in touch throughout the process. And sometimes the process is quick. Sometimes a decision is made within a week, and sometimes it can be a couple of years. And during that time, we are maintaining, contact. Sometimes it's hard to get in touch with people because they're like, hey, you know what? I'm not interested. This is kind of fallen off the radar. And then they'll pop back up sometimes a year later that things have changed, but they're always appreciative of the information we have provided them. So where our role ends, and I think this is what I want to address. So this is important. Once you have chosen the community that is the right fit, our roles shift at that point. So you have made a decision. The community is now going to take over because they have their piece that they need to do. They have a team, And it's going to consist of the executive director who runs the building, the marketing sales director, who is typically the person you are working with to do the touring and deciding if this is the community that you want. Nurses, and that's when we're looking assisted living, memory care, or residential care home. That would be the nurse and the caregivers. Those are going to become your point of contact. And we've talked in a podcast earlier, we talked about what kind of paperwork needs to be completed when you move into an assisted living or a memory care. And all of that, again, that is not something I do because that paperwork is specific to the assisted living or the memory care, all the medical paperwork that's being done with the physician's orders and all of that. They're the ones who hold the license, and they're the ones who are making sure all of that gets done so that you can move into their community. This week, and the reason that I've brought this up and thought, okay, this has happened a few times, so let me just make it real clear for people. And I mean, there's questions. You don't do this every day, so I thought I would explain this. So a real sweet family I've been working with, they called me with some great questions, but they were questions that were really for the community. And one of the questions was, where do I park the moving truck? I'm here, it's move-in day, where do I park the moving truck? That is something you would have discussed beforehand, typically with probably the sales director as you're getting all those logistics planned. So not being in the community, I am not part of their actual team. I don't work at the community. So that could be different at each community where you park a moving truck and where you move in. So I redirected her back to the sales and marketing person. And then I also did send a message to the marketing person just to say, hey, we got a question here. And it had already been resolved, of course. Another question that I had from the same family is, who do I talk to about the medications? Well, that should have already been clear, and it was, but they just got a little confused about it. So again, redirect it, because these are all things that are going to be specific to the community and really not my role at this point, if that makes sense. So both are excellent questions, but once you're moving in, those are questions for the community. The salesperson or the executive director will tell you where it's best to park and unload all your belongings. And the nurse will handle medication lists and doctor's orders, all of that information. Another thing is, I've had a few people ask if I'm going to be there on moving day, and no, the answer to that would be no, because I'm not a mover and you don't want me moving your couch. I may have, depending on the situation, we have people that we refer you to. So we have packers and movers, some really, really great resources that we refer if you're needing someone to help you with that. And we stay in touch with them. And we'll be, of course, we're in touch with you, just making sure everything goes smoothly. So we can, certainly, as I said, we refer to people who that's what they do for a living, is packing and unpacking. Another question, if mom has dementia, can someone be there to sit with her, like if family is setting up? That is something you could perhaps hire a caregiver if there's not a family member who could sit with them. I know we did that when we moved my stepfather to memory care. While my brothers and my mom moved everything in and set his room up, they had a caregiver who sat with him at home until it was time to move him into the memory care. So there's wonderful specialists who do all of that. And so Again, just kind of defining the roles throughout this whole process. Why all this matters and why I'm sharing it is kind of like, think of us kind of as a realtor. We're going to guide you to the right home, or in this case, the right senior living community. But once you've bought it, you own the house, you don't ask your realtor where to hook up the utilities, right? That's going to be maybe some questions to the builder or the HOA or someone else. We partner with senior living communities. We're their partner and we're your partner, your free resource to make this process as seamless as possible. And we're not going to disappear once you've moved in. we will be checking in with you and just making sure, if you have any questions, and I've had people call me and say, hey, I'm kind of unhappy about this. And then I will say, hey, have you talked to the executive director? Bring those concerns, have that open communication, because at the point that you've moved in, you need to have open communication with the staff there at the community, with the team. It's their role. The community's role is to handle all those day-to-day details for you. And anything that you may have that you're not sure about, or if you have a complaint. Now, of course, if something happens and care level changes, say that, mom was independent living and a year later she has dementia and she's wandering and we need to look at another option, then yes, absolutely call us back at that time. And typically you are rerouted back to us, but definitely call and we will help you with that type of transition. And this sometimes happens, you're in a community, everything's great, and then it's sold or new staff comes in, or, there's an incredible price increase that is just more than you can afford. In those cases, certainly call us back, and we're happy to help with that and provide guidance. So remember, placement services like mine, Lori Williams Senior Services, we guide you and educate you. And then the communities handle the move-in and the care going forward. And together, we're partners, each with our own role, each making sure that you or your loved one is safe and supported. And our absolute purpose and goal at the end of the day is to make sure that you or your loved one feel supported and safe and are in the environment where you can thrive and live your best life, because that's what it's all about. Aging in style, right? Living your very best life. I hope that helps to explain how the roles are defined between placement and community. I'm so glad that you tuned in today. And as I always ask you, please share this podcast with your friends, family, neighbors, anyone who could benefit from listening to and learning about senior care, senior living options, and celebrating aging, all the things we do on the podcast. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you will be the one to get every Friday, get a notification that, yay, there's a new podcast and you need to listen to it. So thanks again, and we will talk to you next week. Bye-bye.